All right, so we should be going live. So hi everyone. We have the Decred team, and a crazy amount of people here. This is one of the most exciting sessions, I think, and it's the largest sessions on my channel. And thank you so much, Tyler, for organizing this on a very short notice. I hope you guys hope the audio is fine, and I have the live session on live right now. So I do want to say, of course, guys, if you have any issues with the audio, do speak up because we have like 5 people here. But they have been super nice and kind to set everything up. So we're going to start off with introductions first. I'm going to introduce the session, then we're going to introduce everyone here. So we have Tyler, we have Tim, we have Dave, and Salt. So we're going to go around with introductions, but I'm going to say this is one of the most exciting sessions I have. We're going to talk about Decred, we're going to talk about mining, we're going to talk about ASICs, we're going to talk, this is the original roots, and these guys have been like huge mentors for me in the cryptocurrency space because I've talked to them for a long time, and it's good to have you guys live on my channel as well. And of course, I am part of the Decred ASIC mining squad, so I will talk about that in a second. So let's start off with introductions first. Let's go with Tyler. So Tyler, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hey, thanks for having us on the show, Michael, or Boxmining. I don't know what we should call you.
Michael's great. Michael's great.
Okay. Yeah, so I host the Decred Assembly YouTube show. I work on a lot of business type stuff behind the scenes for Decred as well. And I've been part of the Decred project for, involved pretty heavily in the community for about a year now.
That's crazy.
And I'm an advisor to this DCR ASIC project, which we will talk about later.
And you're an advisor to this channel as well. I have to say that. I took so much advice from you when we started learning about things. If you guys wonder how I learn about things and how I source my information, this is one of those guys I talk to and say, hey, is this legit? What's happening over here? And, does this make sense? Because he's been in this space for such a long time and he's like this crazy expert miner. So guys, yeah, do smash the like button, guys. That is how this is going to work, man. Smash that like button. We're going to take questions in a sec, but we're going to move on to Tim, man. Tim, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Tim Olson. I'm heading up the DCR ASIC project. I've been in blockchain since 2013. Salt and I are big miners. We hit 40% of the Monero hash rate in 2015. We have a large Zcash GPU mining farm that we built last year, and now we're building ASICs. We'll tell you about it soon.
Awesome. That's a lot of stuff. That's a huge amount of ASIC power. All right, we're going to move on to Dave. Now, Dave, what's up?
Hi, I'm Dave Collins. I'm the lead developer for C0 for Decred. Basically, I've been involved since the beginning, I support these guys in what they're trying to do to bring Decred ASICs to Decred. And so, yeah, thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about DSEC with you in a sec as well. And then, okay, and Salt, that's the last person here. Salt, can you introduce yourself?
Hey, nice to meet you. Thanks for having me on the show. I started mining in 2011 in my dorm room. Wasn't a huge mine.
Exactly.
But...
Me too. It is the best.
And then around that time, I was also a security analyst. I sort of got swept away with cryptocurrency, and I've moved around in the space a lot. I've done development, data center management stuff, and now we're doing ASICs. So I'm really excited to do that.
Nice. So let's see, who wants to talk about the Decred project first? Like, what's special about Decred? Does Tyler or does Dave want to talk about it?
Oh man, I think Dave C needs to drop some knowledge for people.
All right, I'll go. Sure, thanks. So Decred is a cryptocurrency similar to Bitcoin and many others, but I would say the key defining feature is that it uses a hybrid model, a proof of work, proof of stake hybrid system. To avoid getting too technical, kind of the entire principle there is that unlike in pure proof of work coins like Bitcoin, where all the power is pretty much in the hands of the miners, or the people that are, like the ASIC, the people who own the ASICs that we're talking about here. In Decred, the power is actually in the hands of the people who own the coins and choose to stake those coins. So they choose to participate in the governance of the coin. By doing that, and I'm sure we'll go into it a bit in the show here, but by doing that, it prevents a lot of the issues that we're seeing in Bitcoin right now, where, what's the real Bitcoin? Is it 2x? Is it SegWit? Is it gold? Is it platinum, silver? Take your pick, right? There's all these different forks going on. And so, in Decred, the stakeholders, the people who actually own the coins, vote on chain And it's the result of that vote that decides which fork is Decred, right? So if there's a change that needs to be made, then we can make that change without fear of fracturing the community in the same way that happens. And I think the other big important piece of that is that it also allows the stakeholders to sort of act as a second layer authentication on top of the miners. You guys are probably aware a lot of time miners have certain incentives to create blocks, for example, that are empty, or maybe certain behaviors that the stakeholders don't really like but aren't technically illegal according to the network rules. So with Decred, the stakeholders can have the ability to sort of veto those blocks and say, like, no, even though they're technically illegal according to the rules, collectively we don't want this particular scenario to occur. And so therefore, essentially, in the end, all the power is put into the hands of the people who actually own the coins and choose to participate.
Exactly. I think this is something that I really want to stress out because, on this channel, we've been talking about SegWit2x a lot. We've been talking about Bitcoin Gold a lot. And a lot of people are so confused about how networks fork. They were asking me, hey, SegWit2x is decentralized, right? So why do people get to fork? Why are these people deciding to split and make these new coins? And people are so confused in this situation. So can you tell us a little bit about this kind of staking system, this voting system as well? Because I view it as a separation of power, right? You got your miners that create the blocks. And I know this is like kind of wrong in many ways, but I associate them to kind of accountants, right? They put all these transactions that are flying around on the network. They put them into a little nice ledger for everyone, and that becomes part of the blockchain, right? So that's kind of the accountants. But the thing is, accountants don't have power in policy making, right? That's not where the power should be. The power should be with the people. So I've always seen what Decred has as a separation of power. So can you tell me a little bit about the voting system that you have there and how, when a miner creates a block, it's voted on?
Right, absolutely, and I agree with that analogy to a certain degree. It is sort of like having the people who control the ledger, your accountant, saying, "Oh, but you know what? I think this is better," and it's kind of like, "Well, math, but right." So, it's kind of. I think it's important that you have the people who actually own the currency or are the stakeholders that make the decisions. So the way that Decred essentially does this is, as I mentioned, there are two layers. You have the proof of work layer, which is the same as any other cryptocurrency that uses that. It solves the puzzle to solve the block. And then on top of it, the way the voting system is that every block requires at least 5 votes. Well, at least 3, excuse me. It picks 5 votes from a random pool of everybody who have tickets. These tickets are randomly chosen to avoid any kind of gaming of the system. And once those tickets are chosen, then the ones that are chosen have the ability to vote. And they can vote on the validity of the previous block. And that sort of enables, there are 2 ways to kind of approach it. One of the things it does is it lets you invalidate the previous block. That is what I was talking about, how it sort of acts as a check on the miners. If they're creating blocks that are valid, but maybe don't have all of the specific characteristics that the stakeholders would like, they can choose collectively. If the majority says no, then that block gets invalidated. The other kind of key point, and this is more important when we start talking about forks, is that those blocks, at least 3 of those people that were selected have to vote. And the reason this is kind of of key importance is and why it prevents the majority of the fork situation is because if you try to create a minority fork, like we'll just use the Bitcoin scenario since I think people are more familiar with it. We've got on one side we have the big blocks, and on the other side we have SegWit. And so the way this would work is it would go to a vote on chain. All of the stakeholders would be in these votes that they put out there. They would be like, I want SegWit2x, or I want big blocks, whatever the case is. So they're going to vote one way or the other. At the end of a voting interval, all of those votes get tallied, and whichever one wins, the network automatically, because everything is pre-coded into the chain for whichever way it goes, the network will automatically switch over to whichever one of those majorities won. And because every side of the chain, remember I mentioned earlier that each one of these blocks requires at least 3 of these votes. If the majority are already on the new chain, they're not on the old chain. And because they're not on the old one, the old chain has a very difficult time acquiring those necessary 3 votes on every block. And so economically speaking, it makes it extremely more difficult for the minority fork, or in this case, let's say that the vote went down and we'll just say SegWit won. And so that was the majority. Since you no longer have enough people on the minority side, or the big blocks in this case, it would not be able to extend that chain because people simply aren't voting. They aren't giving them the votes that they need to continue that chain. And so it sort of creates this scenario where the old chain will die off, And, you don't have this problem with replay protection and all these other issues that kind of come up when you have two chains that are equally viable, because without getting the votes, you simply can't continue the chain.
Exactly. So it's kind of like so you buy tickets, and the tickets are like a staking. You're not buying them. You're staking down and getting a ticket, and then 5 tickets are pulled out at random. So when the fork is announced, etc., so 5 people get the initial vote, but afterwards there's more people that can be called up to vote, right? Is that correct? It's not that 5
Right,
people
so
that get to decide at the time of the fork.
No. So every block picks 5 tickets out of this pool, and people are constantly buying new tickets as well. So you have new people entering, and it sort of acts like a Poisson distribution, where in the same way that proof of work mining does, actually, in the sense that you have all these tickets and they get picked at random. Nobody gets any special privileges. If you have more tickets or less tickets, or you've had the tickets longer than somebody else, that doesn't confer any special advantage to you. Every ticket has a completely independent probability to be picked. And by doing that, there's no way to game the system in the sense that, like, oh, well, because, I have had the ticket for twice as long as this guy, my voice lends more weight. No, it doesn't work that way. Everybody's that is willing to buy tickets has the same voice.
Yeah, I guess it's like being called to a jury, right? You have a population of these tickets, and you're like, yeah, we'll just pull 5 from random and say, hey, guys, you vote on the next block and how the network should move forward.
Correct. And then, the next block, 5 more are picked, and so on. Exactly. And so as tickets are leaving the pool, tickets are being selected, and the pool is shrinking. And at the same time, more people are buying tickets. And so it's also growing, and you end up with this sort of equilibrium that happens where tickets are being selected and leaving, and then more tickets are entering, and it sort of rolls over that way. So just because you were there first doesn't mean that you're always going to be the person in charge. For example, there's, unlike in a lot of pure proof of stake systems, so that's the case. That is not the case in Decred because of this system.
Yeah, because this is one of the things I've been discussing, and this is why I've been following this project for a while, because you guys kind of solve the hard fork problem that's in Bitcoin, and every coin will eventually meet that problem. The thing is, a lot of projects, they don't meet that problem. For example, Ethereum, because they have a strong leader, and the leader has a very big sway in deciding the direction of the coin. We have Charlie Lee as well for Litecoin, and these guys all help a lot. But the thing with Bitcoin is that, and this is eventually the thing that's going to move, everything's going to move towards, because with decentralization, you don't want one strong leader. That's not decentralization, that's centralization. So with decentralization, you don't want one strong leader. That's kind of why I thought Satoshi left. That's why I think he should stay out of this, because we want this to be truly decentralized. And the thing is, the problem with decentralization is that there's factions that fight with each other. There are people who want to control this network, but now you have a governing body. You have a bunch of people who have stakes, and they get called out. It's like being called out from a jury, being called out from the population to sort out where we should go next. And I think that is extremely important. And this is a technology that needs to be, people need to know a bit more about, because I think this is the solution to the problem that we have now, especially at this time. At this time, we have, Bitcoin Gold fork, now Bitcoin Silver coming up. People who are trying to dilute the currency, right? They're trying to make these minor forks, creating new coins, getting them on, and now we have SegWit as well coming up, and it's causing so much confusion for the community. And the Bitcoin is going through this crisis where we don't know who has the control right now. It is being tested. There is a showdown. They're drawing their guns and they're shooting at each other. But you guys solved this. So you guys said, okay, we want the community to be the people that have the power. Of course, to be part of community, you do have to buy stakes in the coin. So I guess that is fair enough. The more you hold, the more you have a say. So and the thing is, you don't have any grandfather clause with that. So anyone can just go and buy these tickets, and now you can start being part of the voting system. Well, rather staking the tickets, because buying is a hard word, because if it implies, of course, that the money is lost. You can always kind of unstake and release your ticket as well, right? Is that correct?
Right. So that's actually another key feature. Sorry, I feel like I'm talking too much here. Yes. So when you lock your coins up, it's called staking, but basically what you're doing is you're locking your coins up until either you get called or it expires. And so the expiration is a pretty long period. It's about 5 months. And the reason for that is that, it sort of, if you think about the word stake, right, it proves that you have skin in the game, right? You're actually staking your coins. If you could just put your coins, lock them up, and then go, I just want to unlock them, you don't really have anything at risk, right? You have no skin in the game. Yeah. So you're having to make a choice that's saying, like, I believe in this currency. I believe in this direction. I'm willing to lock up my funds for potentially up to 5 months to help participate in the governance and help make a decision. And you also, by the way, I think I didn't mention it, but in addition to getting those benefits in terms of governance, you get a reward because, we realize that it takes your time. You are choosing to lock up your coins. And so therefore, it basically is a additional kind of reward that you get for participating as well.
And 5 months in crypto is a hell of a long time.
For sure. It's a crazy long time. So let's move on to mining a little bit as well. So we got we just understood what Decred is. So Decred, it has a crazy voting system that solves the situation of forks, solves these minor forks trying to dilute the coin. I do want to move to Tyler, then we'll talk to Tim and then Salt about ASIC. So we do want to talk a little bit about mining first, and then we talk about why Decred is choosing to go for ASICs and how we're going to implement that. So I think that will be the thing, and then we'll take questions from the audience as well. So Tyler, man, you are the guy for mining. You have gave me a lot of advice for mining. You set up your own crazy mining stuff before. What's the current situation with mining on Decred?
Yeah, so currently Decred is it seems to be primarily dual mined via Ethereum miners. So there's actually a miner out there that was written by a guy named Claymore that allows people to dual mine Ethereum and Decred at the same time. And what happens is majority of the power that the card has gets used for the Ethereum side, and then a decent amount of portion gets used for the Decred side. And what we've been seeing is as Ethereum price continues to drop, the hash rate on Decred is going up. And this seems to be indicative of more Ethereum miners trying to maintain profitability and start mining Decred. And because of this, we also see a large amount of, mining rewards being deposited directly into exchange addresses. And because of this, it seems to be creating a ton of sell pressure constantly on the Decred market, which is it is not always a bad thing. I mean, it's not good for investors, but at the same time, it is good for decentralization and diversifying like the hands of who's going into the currencies or who's gaining the currency. But this is really what we're seeing right now with Decred mining, and what we could potentially see with bringing ASICs to the game is that we have a more invested mining community. Because right now, primarily Decred is GPU mined, and the issue with that is that because we're primarily GPU mined, we're also people with GPUs can mine anything. Like they're not necessarily invested just in Decred, so they can switch back and forth to Ethereum. They can go to the next profitable coin, and they don't really have an actual investment in Decred. So by bringing ASICs to the table, we essentially can hopefully alleviate some of this sell pressure on the market and build a more robust mining community that cares about Decred. Awesome. And because of the design of Decred and the fact that one of the things most people are actually concerned with ASICs and the centralization of ASICs is actually the control of the blockchain. And because of that being put into the hands of the stakeholders, it really makes for an awesome opportunity to bring ASICs to Decred without the threat that necessarily Bitcoin has.
Yeah, and you talked about something very important as well. So all the guys with GPU mining, so you've got like darn, I had a stack of GPUs, but they're not on my table right now. But with GPU mining, you're kind of competing with other GPU miners. That's how mining works, right? So the reward is set by the network. So the reward is kind of the same. So the reward for Ethereum we're talking about is determined by the number of blocks being mined and the difficulty and changes in the difficulty. So the overall reward is the same, but the distribution of that reward goes to different miners. And what you just said was that, as kind of the difficulty in Ethereum increases, the Ice Age that came up, then more and more miners went to Decred, and everyone's very flexible here. So this is very important to remember. I think a lot of people ask about mining on my channel. This is the best source of information for mining. Tyler's been around for a while, and he's got this great. In fact, everyone here is a great. These guys have been here.
I think everybody on this call actually has a lot of experience with mining. So this is like the mining group, and I will definitely make sure that you guys can reach these guys and get their Twitter handles. In fact, I think Tim has their Twitter. Everyone has their Twitter handles here, so that's great. So except for Dave, because really. It's not really on the Twitter much.
But you know, if you guys have any questions about mining, these are the guys to ask, because the thing is, it's immensely complicated. There is a lot of economics involved, and what we went through was very quickly about how economics change. The rewards for the networks can change, and Decred, one of the things that's being mined, they were getting more and more hash power because of changes in the network. And what you said is absolutely true. So GPUs are the ones that you can buy the graphics card, the gamer guy. So that's how I got started. But of course, the next step will be the ASIC. So the ASICs are custom hardware. The thing with custom hardware is that they're very expensive and they show commitment. So I think you did bring up, right, if you buy the specialized hardware that only mines for Decred, then that is going to make you committed to Decred as well. So it's going to be very interesting how that change goes. And of course, you guys decided as a community, as a coin, to go for the ASIC route. Were there any complications? Were there any other drawbacks for doing such a thing?
We'll probably get into that, but one thing I didn't mention is, you know, maybe Dave C should explain this, but there's really a good reason to bring ASICs to Decred, and that's primarily because it helps protect the network. So I don't know, Dave's really passionate about the subject. I know I dived more into the economic side of things because I'm more on the investor side, but you know, maybe Dave could, you know, quickly talk about this side of things.
Sure, let's do very quickly, Dave, and then we'll move on.
Sure. I'll go real quick. So the kind of the most important thing there, I think what it boils down to is that a lot of times people tout the decentralization of GPUs as sort of its strength, is like, hey, you've got a whole bunch of GPUs. In reality, though, it doesn't work out that way. Like, for example, if we take a look at Ethereum, they have roughly 2 million GPUs mining it, but 3 of the pools control 60%, and 6 of the pools control 85%. So, you know, a big concern or a big complaint that usually is levied against Bitcoin for ASIC specifically is that, oh, well, you know, it has the majority of the hash power and there's maybe only 3 or 4 pools. It's the same deal with GPUs. And kind of the problem is that because ASICs are so much more powerful than GPUs, it doesn't take very many of them to be able to completely decimate every GPU that's available. Like, there's no way for GPUs to be able to keep up with it. The consequence of that is if somebody had bad intentions, if somebody wanted to, you know, cause issues with a particular currency, they could create an ASIC in secret, because it's only a few $1 million realistically.
Only a few, right? It's It's
sure.
just a few. You know.
Of course, it's a lot, but
just have a few of those lying around. You know, just a few of those millions of dollars.
That's a drop. That's a drop in the hat for, you know, the crypto.
Right. I mean,
OGs.
You're talking about, you know, market caps of $30 billion. I mean, what's 5 million, right? So I agree, it's a lot for an individual, but, you know, the point is that somebody could theoretically, and it wouldn't be that difficult to create an ASIC, and then there's no way for the GPUs to compete against that. So it kind of leaves your coin vulnerable as long as you don't have this specialized hardware. So.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I have a comment from the community. Mila says, there's 2 million GPUs mining Ethereum only in my country. Yeah, that's a lot of GPUs, and that's a lot of heat being produced. And I also want to thank Michael Noble as well for a $10 donation. Thank you guys so much for watching. We're at 256 people watching right now, so that's pretty amazing and pretty fun. So, you know, thanks guys so much for watching. Smash that like button. And I think we have a live stream on the Decred one as well. So we have a dual live stream yet again. So that's just fantastic. And I do apologize for anyone if you guys are watching on the Decred channel side. I don't have the chat up for that. But next time we do this, Tyler, we're gonna have both chats on, and it'll be super cool and would be fair for everyone. So, awesome. So we're moving on. ASICs do secure things a little bit, and it changes the dynamic drastically. So, do we want to talk about how ASICs are built? I think that would be a cool thing. Like, I'm not sure if anyone has that experience here.
Tim is the man for that.
Tim is stepping up to the plate. All right, ASICs.
Here we go.
All right.
Yeah, just a really brief overview. So an ASIC, just to say what it is, in case people don't know, it means application-specific integrated circuit. And it's sort of like a CPU, but it's not programmable. So if you open up your computer and you look on the logic board, you see a bunch of chips on there, and you know the big one is the CPU. All those other little chips are ASICs, and they only do one thing, but they do it really well and really efficiently. So that's what an ASIC is. So to make one, you basically etch silicon. It's kind of like a photograph. You make a negative, and then you shine light through it, and then that negative is your design, and it gets etched on the silicon below it. And that's how they make chips, which are ASICs. So making that mask, that negative, is very expensive. That's where most of the cost is. It's generally millions of dollars for that one part. But once you have it, you can just stamp out chips very easily. So that's a quick overview of what it is and what the process is about. And the reason you want to do it is because they're very efficient. They use lower power. Like Dave said, they would crush GPUs at mining.
Yeah, and I just want to say a very brief introduction to people who want to know a little bit about mining. You know, mining started off with CPUs. CPUs have, like, you know, you guys have your dual core, your quad core, so they have just like 4 brains in there, kind of like that. And the thing is, their brains are very powerful. They can do many functions. That's why you only have 4 of them. They can do a lot of different things. And then we move on to GPUs. So GPUs are a little bit different. If you look at AMD, they have like 1,000 something cores. They have 1,000 something brains, but they're a little bit dumber. Right, they can do a few particular functions, but not every single function. And then we move on to ASICs, which are the dumbest of them all. They can only do one thing. They're like, yeah, they're like, oh, I can only do one thing. All right, I can do like adding or subtracting or something. So they're very customized circuitry. They can only do one thing, and they can only mine one coin. So you can buy, like, say, an ASIC for Bitcoin, right? The SHA-256. So it just does SHA-256 very well. It's very efficient, low power, and it's much faster. And that's why it works for Bitcoin. And then we have something for something like Dash as well. Dash uses X11. So X11, it does X11, but you can't use a Bitcoin ASIC for a Dash ASIC. And the same thing with the Decred ASIC. The Decred ASIC will just be for the Decred algorithm, and you can't use it for anything else. So it's a trade-off. Everything in life is about trade-offs, right? You're trading off doing different things for higher efficiency, for more calculations, for faster calculations. So everything's a trade-off, and now this is the final trade-off. This is the final phase of things, a specialized thing just for you, just for Decred, one specialized chip. And you talked about manufacturing as well. So what's the process of making that? So it's about stamping, right? So you make that mask and you stamp it on, and you make different ASICs, right?
Yeah, that's oversimplified, but that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's sort of like a photograph. You shine a light onto a silicon like cylinder. You know, they're usually 12 inches around, something like that, and it just kind of etches your design for the circuitry. You just, you know, use the light through the negative to etch what you want, and then they from the cylinder they slice off a very thin layer, and then you have a bunch of chips on this disc, and then they do what's called dicing, where they cut it up into a bunch of little chips, and then packaging is where you put. So when you look in your computer and you see the black square, that's actually the package. That's not the chip itself. That's like a case around it that helps us connect the wires. And so they put it in a package, and then you get that, you know, black looking die that you see on your motherboard. And then we attach that to call it a PCB, printed circuit board. It's just you know, the logic board you would see in a computer.
Awesome. And the thing is, like, I think it's cool to remember how cool this process is. I mean, I've seen these pictures with Intel. They're holding these big wafers. It's a big block of sand, really. I mean, if you think about it, it's a big block of sand. You know, this is the miracle of technology, right? They converted basically a giant block of sand. They etched these tiny circuits on it, and then they diced it and put it in a computer. So, you know, that's why you see some reports, they're like, yeah, an iPhone just cost $10. Well, yeah, it costs $10 because it's just made of a bunch of sand, but it's in terms of raw materials. But getting there is the crazy part, right? Getting there and getting that technology there is crazy.
It's all in the setup and the engineering. Your first chip is a couple $1 million. Then after that, they're like $3 each.
Exactly. Until you change the design.
Until you change the design. And sorry, Saul, you have we haven't been moving on to you, but yeah, so what is your experience as well? I just want to know a little bit about your experience in this as well.
In what part in particular?
In mining and in ASIC design. So yeah.
So I haven't designed an ASIC before. We have somebody on the team who has a long history of designing ASICs. Tim and I have worked together in the past. We set up a pretty large GPU facility, yeah, that's basically my main experience with mining.
Right.
For Z.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God, that is insane. So that is
we actually have two separate locations. So this is the one in the U.S.
Yeah, so so I guess some of the people probably don't know this, but so these guys are actually some of the first people to develop a GPU miner for Zcash. So when Zcash was about to launch, they came out with a new algorithm called Equihash, and Equihash was like this brand new algorithm that no one knew how to hash on, and people weren't actually sure whether or not you could even GPU mine with it. So you know,
For
they
Zcash,
basically
right?
wrote it for Zcash. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
Zcash.
So which one did you
wrote
write?
No, it was in house. So what we ended up doing was we had before launch we had an optimized GPU miner. We were actually beating all the public GPU miners that were out there, and there's a bit of an issue because if you release that code, it's difficult to stop somebody from reverse engineering it. Even if you do all sorts of tricks, it's basically becomes public information, right? So we wanted our customers to benefit from those optimizations without losing our advantage. So we did a crowdfund, and we basically built a data center where we ran our custom GPU software for mining Equihash on the hardware that we purchased with.
Holy
with
shit!
that
This is
crowdfund.
your royalty because I followed that. When Zcash launched, so you guys, just a little bit off topic, but this is just to put everything in perspective because these guys are like super legit. So when Zcash launched, they have a new algorithm. You know, Zcash is all about privacy and they're a completely new way of doing things. And the thing is, when it first launched, I was there. I was using my GPU. I was using my CPU actually. I was using my computer to mine Zcash. So there was a time when these we know how to use the algorithm. We can use it on a CPU because CPU they can do anything, right? They're the smartest brains of the all. But you have to change it slightly so that they're GPU compatible. So I was there at that time where it was kind of this hybrid, and no one had the best miner. I was using Claymore. So at that time, I think that was the one that you said was public, right? So Claymore was continuously optimizing and was increasing efficiency like every single day. And I guess you guys beat them by a lot. Salt, is that
one? So we were competing with them pre-launch. So at that time it was Silent Army. I don't know if you're familiar with their miner.
Yeah, oh yeah, Silent Army, exactly, Silent Army. And then
we were competing
also,
with them. What?
Also Optiminer.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, an Optiminer as well. So we had a big advantage for a while there. I think eventually, long term, especially with us focusing on operating in the data center, we ended up switching over to their software because they out optimized us. But it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, we had to spend our time setting up all that hardware I just showed you. You know, just administering that kind of facility just sucks all your time. So we weren't able to. Yeah, I mean, you understand, right? Even if you run a couple rigs at home, you know how. Like, just take 3 rigs at home, what a pain in the butt they are, and multiply that by 1,000, right? So we weren't able to put our effort into the miner, and that's one of the reasons we're doing this now. We're really developers, right? We're coders. We have a digital designer on the team. We don't want to be doing that facilities stuff. We want to focus on making miners because that's what we're good at.
That's amazing. I mean,
I feel like Tim hasn't really talked enough about their ASIC designer. He wants to remain pretty private. I've actually met him. He is very legit. I don't know if Tim could just speak about him real quick.
Might as well seg into it. He goes by 7400. It's a reference to a NAND gate. He graduated from MIT. He's had over a 30-year career in ASIC design. He's designed at least half a dozen end-to-end, but his designs are in dozens and dozens of ASICs, from PCs to mainframes, consumer electronics, all over the place. His designs are in hundreds of millions of units that have shipped. So he's a rock star, and we're really lucky to have him on the team.
Holy crap. I mean, yeah, this is like your secret weapons, right? Because I mean, it's crazy how this is formed by like these genius designers, and that's what you really need, because when you design an ASIC, I feel like there's so much complex circuitry, and once you print that off and make the mask, you can't go back, right? You can't make another one.
Yeah, it's a really key point, because these things only do one thing, and because you're etching it, you have to get it right the first time. I mean, there are some things you can do to fix it sort of at the end, but once you go to press, so to speak, that's that. And so you really want someone with a ton of experience who knows what they're doing.
Exactly. And years of experience and making sure that there's no errors in the code as well. Oh, well, not in the code, but in the circuitry design. So how does the process work? So now what stage is the project at?
So we've taken the engineering as far as we can go until we need big bucks for specialized work. Excuse me. So yeah, so basically we're looking to raise $6 million to basically turn on the factory. Like I said, there's a huge upfront cost to even make that mask, and there's some other fixed costs. But once we get over that, we can pump out these really powerful miners and take Decred back from the GPU dual miners who don't really care about it.
Right. So you're trying to raise that money from the Decred community, or where are you trying to raise that?
Yeah, anyone who wants to mine Decred. We love the project. They're solving problems that Bitcoiners are only now realizing are problems. It's true.
It's true. It is true.
And the ASIC, we think, can really help the community in terms of who gets the coins that are mined. Hopefully people who care about Decred will get it. So yeah, so we're going to run a pre-sale, and hopefully a lot of people who care about Decred are going to buy miners that only mine Decred, and then they're going to have stay in the community.
Exactly.
Yeah, and mining Decred and staking Decred is even more profitable. So it's there's a good incentive to be invested in the Decred project. And like one thing I want to mention that we didn't really talk about was like Dave and the other guys that are the developers behind the Decred project. They built BTCD, or what is called BTC Suite, and that's basically a full node implementation of Bitcoin written in another language. And Bitcoin, for most people, don't realize it's not technically a protocol. And the reason being is because it doesn't have a specification. So there's nothing out there that says like, hey, you need to do all these things in order to create your own implementation. Right now, like they basically went out there and matched bug for bug what's in like Bitcoin D or the C++ version of Bitcoin or Bitcoin Core as we know it. These guys are some of the best developers that I've come across in the space that are working on alternative currency projects, like altcoin projects. So, I mean, I think that's like, they recently came out with the atomic swap stuff, and they built the project in the way that anybody can adopt it. It's not, they're not just doing it for themselves. They're doing it for things that matter for the entire space. And, I don't think Dave, would pat his own back too much, but he's honestly one of the best developers that I've ever come across in the space, and as well as many of the other guys that are on the Decred team. And these guys, they continue to deliver, and they also they're just fully invested in their coin, and they don't hype things ahead of time. So they're working on things right now that people are going to be extremely excited about that they're not talking about. Exactly. And that's the level that they're at. They're not this hype machine. They want to build things.
We see a lot of hype in this space. I mean, in the cryptocurrency space, it's a lot about hype. We see definitely a lot of messages coming here. Even in live chat, even where we talk about what's the newest coin, what's the hottest coin. But of course, the coins need to do work. Every altcoin needs to develop a project, and I covered you guys for the atomic swap because that was very exciting, and that's going to change how exchanges work and how we exchange currencies in the future. And then we have more things as well coming up. So I'm definitely excited for good developers. And, I learned from gaming how good code is really important. That was one of the most important things. I think a lot of people don't realize this. You can patch together a project and it can work. It can function. But the moment something happens and you need to change anything, most of the code falls apart if you don't do good coding. If it's not very understandable, it's not very even it's just basic reading. People forget what they were doing, and if they want to make any changes, boom, it's hard. And for other people to join in the project as well, it's gonna be crazy. So yeah, definitely, Dave. Utmost respect for you for moving on and doing the best things for the community as well.
Well, thank you for all the kind words.
Okay, so we do have some questions from the channel. So what we'll do right now is I'll answer some questions. We'll take some questions from everyone else. We did have DK asking. So this is a serious question. When will the Decred miners get released, and where do we purchase them from? So DK is very excited, obviously. About
Thanks for that leading question. That's the perfect question. It'll take about 6 months to produce those. Part of that time is just in approvals and stuff. We're going to have them UL listed and everything. So about 6 months after we do the funding. We haven't opened sales yet. You can go to dcrasic.org and see more information about that there, or sign up for our mailing list or whatever. We're going to announce hash rates and prices in about a week or 10 days, something like that. And then we'll open up sales a week or two after that. So stay tuned.
Awesome. Yeah, stay tuned. Check out the website and make sure you guys know what Decred is. I think this is most important. Know what Decred is, and then check out what they're doing with the mining stuff. I think that's most important. And do we get to see like the manufacturing process? I've always been interested in how ASICs are manufactured.
So unfortunately, a lot of that is very proprietary technology, and the foundries make us sign very strict confidentiality agreements. They won't even give us quotes or talk to us unless we promise to shut up. So we can, give notifications about major milestones, but we can't really show exactly how it's done.
I was hoping for a factory visit. Just go to a factory, check out how these ASICs are made. That will be exciting.
They do have some cool tours of TSMC on YouTube, which are awesome. And I mean, the lengths that they go to protect the chips are insane. They have like 2 sections that remove all the dust, so no particulate enters the clean room and all this stuff. It's worth watching if you're interested.
Yeah, it makes an operating room look dirty. It really does. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's crazy. Because the amount any dust that gets into it would mean that this dust would just completely mess up the circuit. So that's why it's important. And I do want to say one funny thing, just a funny story, is that we're using silicon right now, right? So it's Silicon Valley. Everything's printed on silicon. It's basically sand. And I had a background in chemistry, and one of the professors there was, they're very old people. They were part of the British team that were trying to work out how to design chips and circuits. So this is like 30, 40 years ago. And at that time, the Americans were choosing to use silicon because they thought silicon's cheap. It's you just stick it up, it's a bunch of sand. The British, they wanted to use gallium arsenide because they thought this was a little bit more easy to work with. But the problem was it was more expensive. So I want to say that, yeah, the Americans won, and he was like, oh, darn, we were wrong. Like he's always going like, we could have been pioneers here in this space. We should have just used sand. So funny thing about technology and science and everything, it's so funny how, these guys were pioneers, and it's so funny how things just work. So this is amazing. So yeah, it's good to see TMSC. I'm always super interested in how these circuits are designed, and and it's good that you guys are working on this stuff. It's super cool. So are both of you guys so is Tim and Saul, are you both working on the ASIC team as well? Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we both are basically at DCR ASIC, and we have 7400 as well with us. That's basically the founding team.
Nice.
There's more to do around integrating with the mining software. We have to make a few adjustments to the pool protocol. So it's not just about the ASIC. There's an enclosure, a motherboard, stuff like that. So 7400 heads up the actual chip, and then there's all this other stuff around that we handle and other people handle.
Okay. And we have a question from the audience. Oh, sorry.
Okay. I was going to say it's probably worth mentioning that you guys do actually already have a working prototype, correct?
We do. So there's something called an FPGA, field programmable gate array. It's sort of between a fully programmable CPU and a not programmable ASIC. It's kind of like a programmable ASIC. You could think of it like that. So we have it running on an FPGA mining so that we can prove that our circuit is designed correctly. It doesn't give us good information about the speed necessarily, because designing for an ASIC is different than an FPGA, but at least tells us that it works.
Awesome. So So it's a way of prototyping without spending the money and building that expensive mask. You can get an estimate of what's going to happen next, right?
Yeah, and there was a point in Bitcoin actually where FPGAs were catching on before there was the first ASIC.
Right.
I don't know if you remember that, but most coins nowadays will just skip right to ASIC because they've sort of already been proven that it's an interesting step for companies to take, and they'll just wait for the market cap to get big enough. But in the early days of Bitcoin, there was actually a phase where there was no ASICs yet, and people were outperforming GPUs on FPGAs.
Yeah, and there was a company called Butterfly Labs too. I'm not sure if you remember that. They were... I'm still waiting for mine, so there we go. So I do have a question from the audience here. So they have a question. Is there a way to let the Decred community have shares / ownerships of the ASIC manufacturing facility / project by taking DCR as collateral? That's asked by S. or Ratra. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what that question would mean. We're opening it for sale, really. We're not. The Foundry is a different company. There's some design entities that are different companies.
Yeah, I mean, there's a good potential. Like, there's a very good probability that this will be the first ASIC to hit Decred. And what the team has agreed to do is basically allow a certain period of time before they decide to sell any more ASICs.
Right.
So that will help, ROI for the investors, and they're capping sales to prevent people from competing against themselves.
So So is there a set number that will be manufactured, and is the stock limited?
Yeah, so we're going to limit stock. So as you know, mining is what we call a zero-sum game. There's only so much mining output every day. And so if you make a whole lot of miners, they're fighting against each other for the same size pie. So if we make too many miners, everybody's slice of the pie is too thin. So we're going to cap the number of miners that we sell so that everybody gets a decent sized slice of the revenue.
Yeah. Right. So it's good that you're frank and open about that. I think that's the most important thing, because eventually it is zero sum. So basically the amount of value that is produced is shared between all the miners. So if you just constantly print more and more of this, then you're going to dilute the returns of this. So
right.
So right now the community has a chance to mine, and then they have a chance to contribute and get pre-orders, right? Is that kind of the way it works?
We're going to do a pre-order model. And just to be clear, I'm not on the Decred team. Dave is on the Decred team, but me and Salt, we're a separate company making this ASIC, bringing it to the Decred community.
Yeah, this is just to be clear, this is a purely community-driven effort. There's no direct affiliation with the Decred project, so these guys really do have their ducks in a row or whatever. So I do feel very confident that the project is going to deliver, but just like anything, there's a risk that comes with that. So we should just want to be perfectly clear that this has no direct affiliation with the Decred project.
Awesome. All right. Yeah, it's very important to set that distinction, because of course having ASICs and chip manufacturing is a big part, and I've seen that in the Dash community as well. They have like 2 ASICs coming out, but of course they weren't community-driven efforts. So this is the biggest difference with that as well. So that one was Bitmain jumping in, and Bitmain and and how they work. So I'm taking more questions. So one question was, how long before GPUs become if not as profitable to mine on Decred?
As soon as the ASICs hit.
I know it's a very basic. Yeah, exactly. As soon as
within 12 hours, I would say.
It'll be fast. It'll probably be fast.
But back to the point you just mentioned a minute ago, though, as it is a community effort, and now we want to hear feedback on everything. So check out our site. And if you're in the Decred Slack, we're on there as well. You can send us an email. hit us up on Twitter, any of that. So if you have feedback or concerns or anything, we'd love to hear from you.
Awesome.
One of the things we're trying to do is make it a little more accessible for home miners. S9s are really loud. They take a lot of power. Ours is going to be a little lighter weight. We're going to keep it to a power that, you could use a normal computer power supply with. You don't need special equipment. And hopefully, it's not, it'll sound more like a computer than a vacuum cleaner. So, hopefully it gets spouse approval, if you know what I mean.
This is why I stopped mining at home. This is exactly why I stopped mining at home. It's because like they sound like the more you build, you get greedy and you buy like 10 graphics card, and like I've tried getting ASICs and stuff. They sound like jet engines. I think a vacuum cleaner is it's putting it lightly. So
Yeah. And not to encourage home mining necessarily. I mean, that's on you. But just as part of our approach to the community, right? We want this to be available to a lot of people and make it accessible. So we're going to try to keep the price point low and everything else.
Right.
Yeah, and I think one good point to bring up is it's actually probably a lot easier to go and find a private group that has a bunch of money and be like, hey, we're going to build this ASIC for you. And you're going to have all the profitability for like 6 months. Like you're just going to own the network for 6 months. Like that is highly that's a likely scenario. That would be very easy to go out and raise a bunch of money and just totally screw over the community. And, one point I want to make with why we're, trying to adopt this effort is we're trying to make it accessible to everybody, because that's what's in the best interest of the community. And not to mention, if things don't go right, like the community could fork the protocol, but that's why, bringing it out and making it, I mean, it's not something that Dave C or any of the Decred devs really want to do, because it'd be a big waste of time and push a lot of other stuff, really cool stuff that's going to be coming down the pipeline soon back. But, by bringing the whole community on board and also, changing the conversation around why ASICs are bad, because they're not necessarily bad for Decred because of how the system is designed. So, I think that's a good point to realize, like a community-driven effort, even though it does involve some risk and some pre-sales, it's I think a lot less risky than all these crazy ICOs that, these people are, don't even know how to code. They
can write a great marketing white paper.
You could just rip off Decred's code and then put it in your GitHub repo, like some project that's out there that I'll refuse to name right now. That's really pathetic, but
it happens. I mean, this is right now. Marketing does matter. I'm one of those guys that believe marketing matters, but of course, making sure your website's secure matters too. I mean, I've seen so many ICO projects that can't secure their websites, and it's sad, but it does take a lot of time, and it's one of those things that is hard to do. So I do want to say, of course, there was a question: which country will it be shipped from, and how would the project be taking payment? So what form of currency?
Yeah, so we're shipping out of the U.S. We're doing final assembly here and as much work inside the U.S. as possible. And right now we are planning on taking DCR, BTC, and ETH. So those are the three. We're looking at USD as well as an option. Crypto plus US dollar payment processors can get pretty hairy. So yeah, it's looking like those three cryptos are probably what we're going to end up with.
Awesome. I mean, that's good. So you're taking a few cryptos and it's coming out of US, which is quite interesting as well. So it's not a Chinese chip project.
So the chips will be made in Taiwan, at TSMC. They're in Taiwan, but that's just the chip, and then all the motherboard and the case and everything else and assembled like Salt said will be here in the US. And I mentioned it before, but we are getting UL listing. We're going to have international electronics certifications on this, so that people should have not much problem with their customs or border. Depends on your country. I can't promise, but it's going to be a lot better certified than like an Antminer, which has basically nothing.
Yeah, exactly. Right. That's awesome. So it's go. I'm pretty excited to check this project out, and I'm definitely gonna send the link. So it's dcrasic.org or whatnot. Awesome.
Yeah,
So
I can try putting it in the chat there.
Yep.
dcrasic.org.
Right, and that's gonna work. And guys, I do want to say, of course, I do want to talk about the Decred Assembly as well. Tyler hosts the Decred Assembly, and this is one of the most valuable channels on this network. They had Charlie Lee go on the channel. They had so many people. I think just like even Fluffy Pony was on. Fluffy Pony from Monero was on the channel. And I think this is one thing that I've been talking about this in this channel a lot, getting good, insightful information. I mean, a lot of guys, you probably want to hear, words straight from the horse's mouth. And I think this is one thing that I want to do on my channel, but they're doing it so much better because they're being in here, this community so much longer than I have. So, thank you so much, Tyler, as well, for coming on. And thank you everyone for coming on. And I'd like to say, Decred is just an amazing project. And it's important now because we complain so much about all these forks. It's like devaluing the network, Bitcoin Gold, and Segway 2x, and we have so much conflict in the community, and having a voting system is just really, really important. So I'm glad that Decred has solved that, and I really want to see something like this just like everywhere. People should know about this because they complain and then they don't know, oh hey, there's a better solution. So do check that out, and do check out how they're working things because this is amazing. And do check out Decred channel as well. So guys, do you have things else that you guys want to talk about as well? Any things about the project in particular?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to definitely give a shout out to you, Michael. You've come up so fast in this space, and even our conversations behind the scenes, you're always a very ethical person, and I really appreciate having more people like you in the space. So, I really appreciate you having us on the show. And most people don't realize this, but it's really hard to find really good ethical people in crypto sometimes. There are definitely a lot of them, but I feel like sometimes there's a lot more people that are just out to do some money grabbing, and and I think what you're doing with Boxmining is really awesome, and you're bringing a lot of new people into the space, and
Thanks, man. I've been trying. Yeah. I'm not the most ethical person. I can't say I'm like the most ethical person out there, but I do try to visit projects. I do try to get people there. I try to go there and talk to people face to face because I think that's the value a lot of things bring. You can read a white paper, but until you see someone face to face, it's important. And you can talk about a project, and the project can say anything, and you can hear so many different things. But you got to look at the creators, the founders, the people involved, and that's how you judge a project. And that's what I'm been trying to bring to the space, these few months. So thank you guys so much for your thank you, Tyler, so much for that heads up, and thank you so much for teaching me about so many different things as well. So it's great to meet you, Dave. It's great to meet you, Salt and Tim. I would love to have you guys sometime back on this channel. You guys are expert miners, and box mining is the roots of this channel is about mining, right? I have moved on to more news, more China related stuff, and more different project related stuff, but mining is the core of how I got started in cryptocurrency. And just seeing that picture that you showed up earlier, Tim, with that huge array setup of stuff, I mean, that is phenomenal work. That doesn't just take a 9 to 5 job to do. That takes full dedication. Like, you won't sleep setting that up, and if something goes wrong, like, there's so much at stake, and just that maturity to deal with that is just amazing. So that's crazy, man.
Just as an example, I spent about 2 days straight opening boxes for GPUs. Nothing else.
But that is so hot, though. That is so hot. You just get that box, and oh man, like, I love opening boxes. That's
yeah, but the 500th box you really don't want to open. You're just tired of it.
Yeah. So one thing I want to add before we get off here real quick is, from a personal level, I really appreciate what you guys are doing here. I really am pretty passionate about Decred having ASICs, and I just want to point out that, these guys are really, in my opinion anyway, they're really going about it the right way. They're trying to involve the community. They're trying to make sure that it's a fair distribution. They're highly qualified, and, they're actually taking the time to engage. As you can see, they're on the show here, putting their face out there publicly. I really appreciate that on a personal level. I hope that everyone else can see the benefit of that and appreciates it as well.
Awesome. And one question, where does the name Decred come from?
Sure. From decentralized credit is what it is. I think if you guys are familiar with sci-fi at all, pretty much the money in pretty much every sci-fi is credits, right? So
Right.
it's sort of like the future has to do with the future there, right? Credits are pretty much a future monetary and then decentralized. So decentralized credit, Decred.
Exactly, Decred. That's where the name comes from. So, guys, thank you guys so much for coming on this show. Thank you, Tyler, for organizing this on such short notice. And thank you guys for showing up as well. Everyone's showing up here. Very short notice. That is my bad. I take full responsibility for it. I'll definitely tell you guys more in advance when things are happening. But I thought this was one of the events that I'm finally free, and I was like, okay, let's do this. Thank you guys for showing up in such short notice as well. We got like so many people here. So excited, and to meet people who've been in the mining space for such a long time with real reputation, with people who build actual projects, and to meet people who make ASICs. That is like super cool. So like this is something that I gotta thank you guys for coming and sharing your experience with you guys for. So thank you guys so much for watching. And if you guys have any questions, do ask people on do ask them on Twitter. I think we have yeah, Dave, Salt. I think yeah, we'll just put the names up here a little bit more so it's a little bit easier. Oh, boom. So they have the Twitter handles there. So if you guys want to ask them any questions, you know, this is all about learning. I hope you guys can answer some questions as well about mining or anything and share experiences, because this is a really hard industry to get to. You know, mining is really hard, and not just mining, but crypto is very hard. And you know, I've been burnt so many times on the way as well, and that's why I started my channel, to share that with my experiences, you know, how I went wrong sometimes. And I think that's important, because sharing mistakes is important as well. So I hope you guys can share your stories. Like guys asked a lot of questions, and guys, thank you guys so much for watching and coming, guys. See you next time.
Thanks, Michael.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
Take care. Thank you.
Bye bye.